Welcome to Always Real Talk, so you know it's going to be real. We're here and we're talking about something that everyone is talking about. Everyone is discussing. Some people know it more than others know it. But one thing that's clear, there's a case at the Supreme Court that's in front of the Supreme Court or that possibly could be heard that will affect civil rights legislation here in the United States of America. With me in the studio, I have some power hitters here today. I have Donald Temple, my good friend, who is Temple Law Firm. Most of you know what he does, but he is a HU graduate, also a graduate of the University of Santa Clara? Santa Clara, and also the LLM at Georgetown University Law Center, one of the top law firms in the country. This individual and this firm they take on everyone. They take on everyone that's wrong. Am I right?
No.
If they're wrong, they come to you. And
we throw some stones.
Well, he says he threw some stones, but he's thrown a lot of stones. I mean, successful litigation against the city of Philadelphia, against the District of Columbia, Prince George's County, there's CVS, Bank of America. I could go on and on and on. And I know you will add more to that. Also joining me is my good friend Rob Jenkins. Rob Jenkins is with the law firm Byron and Jenkins. And Byron and Jenkins was just nominated again for one of the best top criminal law firms by the Washingtonian magazine.
That's correct.
Washingtonian magazine, of course, they're always around somewhere. It's another HU, Howard University gentleman that's sitting here. Also George Washington University Law School. He's clearly has been on MSNBC Live.
Yes.
And also is one of the past poll marks of Kappa Alpha Psi, the Washington Alumni Chapter, and is also a grand board member of Kappa Alpha Psi Incorporated. Now we got that out the way, gentlemen. Look, I was watching a lot of TV, going back and forth, reading. I sat down, Donald, with my aunt, and just trying to understand what's going on. She called and she said, "Man, this guy Byron, he's about to take all the civil rights away from everyone, and we're going to be." And she was very concerned about that, not understanding the case. I want to start off asking both of you, Donald. I'll start with you, then I'll come over to Robert. What is before us, and why is it before us? I don't want to go dig to all the other stuff. I just want real simple. What is before us right now, and what is the Supreme Court? What are they listening to?
Sure. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with both of you. I'm president of both of your fan clubs. I think the history is important, and where we are in the time. It's 2019, and I would just go back to post-Civil War and our Congress. Our Congress in 1866 passed 42 U.S.C. sections 1981 and 82. Section 81 is one of the most powerful anti-discrimination provisions in the country. You can actually sue private individuals, and you can sue the government. But the power, the strength of that provision is in private discrimination, and the law has been tested. It was amended in 1981, but the power of 1981 can be seen in a contractual situation. So it says the purpose of the section, the term making and forced contracts means the making, performance, modification, and termination of contracts, and listen to this, the enjoyment of all benefits of that contract. So you remember the Eddie Bauer case we did.
Right.
That was a 1981 case. And so just to show you how wide its application is, it could be used in consumer racism. We sued the University of the District of Columbia, and its law school didn't give tenure to a professor. 1981.
Well, do me a favor. Keep it real simple.
But I'm trying to give you the context. So when it comes to Byron, and Byron is in communications, Byron's attempting to expand his network capacity, his capacity to bring his programming into the stream of networking, and that involves contracts. So when he goes after particular contracts to do this, and let's just talk about this case in Comcast and what's before the court. Comcast says no. Byron says, well, I am similarly situated, similarly qualified, if not better qualified, than white that you given the contract to. There's discrimination, and you're not giving me this contract because of racial discrimination. racial discrimination is not so simple. And I just want to ask your indulgence because lawsuits start with complaints. And so this case is about the complaint, not about discovery, which follows a complaint,
Right.
not about summary judgment, which follows discovery, or trial. Those are important. And in the process of bringing a complaint, you have to allege facts and you have to allege claims that meet a certain standard. And the court here in California said that his complaint did not meet the threshold for showing discrimination. And that
That was the initial.
the
right?
United States
Right.
District Court,
Right.
he lost. And he appealed to the Ninth Circuit, which is in California and other far western states, and they disagreed with the lower court. And they said that, and this is critical, your proof standard when you do a pleading, a complaint, is not as high as the lower court says. All you have to do is show that that race is a factor, okay? Not the but-for cause, not the only cause. And that's what this case is about.
Okay. So, Robert, as he laid out, the initial lower court agreed with Comcast.
Correct.
Then it was what? Appeal.
And then it was appealed to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit,
Right.
which is based out in California.
Right, as he mentioned. And they did what?
They disagreed with the lower court.
Okay.
Okay.
And so they disagreed with the lower court,
Right.
which then
Led to Comcast seeking review by the U.S. Supreme Court, and that's where we are right now.
and that's where we are right now.
That's where we are right
And
now.
because the lower court agreed with Comcast, and then the appellate court, can I say appellate? I mean, I'm
Yes,
a lawyer.
yes, you're right.
The appellate court, see all these fancy technical stuff. The appellate court agreed with Byron,
That's right.
and then Comcast then took it to the Supreme Court.
That's right.
Okay, I think it's very important because people are saying that Byron Allen has taken this to the Supreme Court and has put everyone's civil rights in jeopardy. So I think the first thing that needs to be clear is that he did not do that.
Right. I think factually that's
Factually, right.
inaccurate. I also think that that's an unfair.
What's in
Well, it's inaccurate to say that he brought it to the U.S. Supreme
Right,
Court.
but that's
because that's not true.
because you hear people out there that create this narrative, and like my aunt was saying, hey, very concerned that this African American man has caused this much, could possibly cause this much damage to civil rights, and that's what I wanted to see. Is that true? Is that
Well,
not true?
I think the second part is also just an unfair characterization to say that he is putting all black people's civil rights at risk. And I don't
Right.
think that's what he's doing at all. I think what he's doing is quite courageous, and I think certainly I applaud his effort. As Donald can tell you, bringing discrimination cases, whether it's based off of age, race, gender, whatever the case may be, always challenging and always difficult. And the standard that a plaintiff has to meet in order to even get into court, all right, to be able to have his claims heard, it shouldn't be made at such or raised to such an impossible standard that it denies people their rights to even be heard. Okay, that should not be the motive, the driving force. It should not be what the courts are about. The court should be about granting broader access to individuals who have been discriminated against. And what this case really all comes down to is whether or not, in order to even bring a claim, you have to establish that the but-for standard, as being bantered about much in the media today, when people have been discussing this case, whether or not that should be applied. And that's a very, very difficult standard to apply.
Okay. Let's back up though, and I'm with you. I'm following both of you. Byron Allen did not bring the case to the Supreme Court. Comcast took the case to the Supreme Court.
Yes.
Right? And Comcast took the case to the Supreme Court to open up this argument, defend this. We got a civil rights law that's being jeopardized, and this is what people think at home. And Comcast, what did they do that caused, because that's how we got here, right? Because if in fact Comcast would not have appealed to the Supreme Court, where would we be?
the case would be back in trial, at the trial level, and
Okay,
proceeding
Or
to
at least discovery.
proceeding to discovery.
So
Proceeding to discovery,
someone
right?
at Comcast decided that no, we're going to take this to the Supreme Court.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
And what did they challenge in Supreme Court to then end up to jeopardizing or putting in some sort of jeopardy this civil rights law?
Well, first of all, the civil rights law, and I attended the court hearings and I listened attentively. I think that there is still very healthy respect for 42 U.S.C. 1866 as amended by the Congress in 1991. And so I don't feel, and I didn't leave the court saying, oh my God, there's a Scalia type encroachment on this, there's this fear. I didn't leave afraid, and I do civil rights litigation. But what it does do already, you got to remember already in federal litigation, civil litigation, there is the Iqbal Twombly standard. So there's a high pleading standard. And what we as plaintiffs don't want to have to do is to prove our case when we file it. Because we don't know what we don't know till we do discovery.
That's right.
And so in this case, when you have a but-for case, and what Byron is saying is, hey, let me come in, there's a mixed motive dynamic, race is a factor, how do I prove it? In employment discrimination, you prove it, you treat the white guy differently than me, and you let me bring my case.
Don, but let's back up though. Byron did not take the case to the Supreme
No,
Court.
we talk about trial.
I know,
Yeah.
I got you. But
Yeah,
I
yeah.
want,
Well, I think
what
we're
I'm
talking
trying to
about
get to
him
is how
filing
did it? Comcast went to file something with the Supreme
That's
Court.
within their right.
Right.
though.
Yeah, but
yeah.
what exactly did they file?
They challenged the United States Court of Appeals ruling, which would have sent the case back to the trial level, and then they would have gone to discovery. They said this case should not even proceed to discovery. It should not even be allowed because the complaint that Byron filed on his face is defective. It doesn't meet the standard, the but-for standard.
Right. So, and then, because I'm trying to make a connection how it got to the civil rights about to be violated, because it went from Byron suing, the undercourt agreeing with Comcast, him appealing, the appellate court.
That's right, appellate court.
See, I'm getting there. The appellate court saying no, we agree with Byron.
That's right.
Someone at Comcast making a decision to then take it to the Supreme Court.
Which was not automatic.
That's right.
I'm just saying, someone made a decision. They said they sat around a table and they said, what are our options? And the options would have been what at that time? Before they took it to the Supreme Court.
There are no other options other than to go to trial.
Yeah.
To trial.
So they certainly could have. They could have done nothing, which would have meant that the case would have went back to the district court. The case would have proceeded along the trial schedule with discovery. Without a doubt, there would have been some summary judgment motions probably brought on both sides. After those had been disposed of by the court, a determination of whether or not a trial would have been necessary.
But they felt as though it wasn't even necessary to be heard.
Who's they?
Comcast.
Well,
I'm trying to
you're getting into something though. And here, see, we have to look under the rock. That's under the rock. That's under the rock here. And how do you you look at this? Because you have civil rights, and you got to look at the country and where we are. Because it's not coincidental that the Justice Department was involved in this litigation and filed an amicus brief saying the same thing that Comcast is saying.
But that's after.
And that's where the attack.
No, but that's after Comcast made a decision.
Presumably.
See, that's where things. This is what people want to understand. We understand that Byron sued. The lower court said we agree with Comcast. He appealed. The appellate court upheld him and said no, we agree with you. And then where it gets confusing is going from how did it get to the Supreme Court and possibly jeopardizing everyone's civil rights. So it got there because someone made a decision to appeal to the Supreme Court.
Correct.
Right.
And I don't think it's well, we can only speculate on this, but I think
but
that
factual.
Donald will probably agree with me that the decision by Comcast to appeal, to seek review by the Supreme Court, probably wasn't one made in a vacuum. There probably were some outside influencing forces of people from the business community, people even from the current U.S. administration who decided that, hey, look, this standard that was just announced by the Ninth Circuit is one that is not in our interest. And this may be a great case for us to be able to get the Supreme Court to lay down the law once and for all so that the business community will be protected. For those who feel as though that race discrimination cases are too plentiful, that they're too easy to be brought, that this case represents a challenge to people even being able to bring race discrimination cases. And that's what this really is about.
Right.
It really is about closing the front door to the courthouse to racial discrimination.
And someone made a decision that it was in their best interest to figure out how to do that.
That's right.
The person that did that was not Byron Allen.
That's correct.
The person that did that was Comcast and others, right? But Comcast actually was the one who did it.
It's very clear that Comcast
did it,
that.
how they did it. And I think that's
clear.
very important to lay out what you just mentioned. You have a certain segment of community that wanted this to take place because they want an outcome that could defend actions that could be adverse to people of color. Hold your thoughts. We'll be right back with my good friends Donald Temple from the Temple Group, as well as my good friend Rob Jenkins from Byron and Jenkins in Alexandria, Virginia. We'll be right back.
Academy. My name is Kayla Williams, and I'm a freshman at Temple University. The program has helped me by opening my mind to travel more.
The Challenge now in GSF has helped me just open my eyes to different cultures, gave me the opportunity to learn and speak a different language, and then experience that and then use that language in another country.
And just realizing that there are people out there who are not as fortunate as I am. And so it makes me want to help them. Just knowing that you have to always be open to new things and never judge anybody.
Back, we're talking about this Byron Allen lawsuit, or Comcast brought lawsuit to the Supreme Court that's caused so much issues. And we were kind of having a conversation, Rob, about the significance of this particular case and how, as you mentioned, Don, people didn't even understand what this law was until recently. I mean, they didn't, right? And it's not because people aren't paying attention, people don't want to know. It's just something that's a sleeping giant that's over there that's now people are talking about it. The sad part is that people are talking about it because they believe that it's in jeopardy. So therefore, because it's in jeopardy, we have to protect our interest, right? And why did this man, Byron Allen, do this to us, right? Because that's the narrative. You guys don't understand that. You guys don't understand it because you're in a legal community. But if you go outside and you ask a person, they'll be like, "Yeah, man, I don't know why he's doing that. I don't know why that brother's bringing that."
But truth be told, I think that's passé. I mean, I think that Byron Allen.
If it's passé,
because we discussed that and explained to people, so they should be able to decipher that this is the course of litigation. The real questions are in the weeds of the litigation, and people need to understand.
See, you like those weeds.
Right.
I want to get back to the point is, someone thought it was okay, and I know it's their right, and then that's how and I know it's the legal system is designed to allow you to do it, but someone thought it was all right to challenge this law.
But we made that point,
and to put this law in jeopardy. Okay, now it goes to what does that mean, right? The weeds of it.
The weeds of it. I mean, the question is really elementary question. It's proof. Here's a scale. I don't know if this is a mic or not.
No.
Okay.
This is not a mic.
Here's a scale, and the question is, how much proof do you need? In a mixed motive case on this side, all you got to say, hey, there's 5 reasons, but race is one of 5. You can bring the case. Your case goes forward. Okay, that's what the United States District Court did in Byron's case. Or there's a scale that says that, but for race, one of the only reasons that you didn't get it is race. That's higher than 1 out of 6 reasons where race is just a factor, a motivating factor.
You've been around a long time. Clearly, it seems as though race is a factor. When you lay out the number of African Americans that Comcast actually it's 0.
Well, I think
That's not what they said.
I think what's
That's not what they
probably getting
I mean,
lost.
but that's factual though. I think.
I don't know that.
No, I don't think it's I think now we're talking about what's really been getting lost.
That's and that's what I want to come
Yes,
to.
yes.
We've been talking a lot about legal standards, but for mixed cause and things of that
Yeah,
nature.
the stuff that-
the average person on the street, that's Chinese to them. They don't understand what that's really about. What I think the case is really bringing to light is how what we consume in the airwaves, on TVs, how it gets there, who makes those decisions, and what are the motivating factors behind those decisions. All right, and why
Absolutely.
there are so few minorities on TV, why there are so few minority-owned networks, and things of that nature. Who makes these decisions? Okay, and how are people compensated for their participation in the system? And I think that's what the lawsuit is really bringing a greater amount of light to. Once we get past the legal standards in Court of Appeals and Supreme Courts and things like that, what Byron Allen is saying is that it's not a coincidence, all right, the limited number of targeted African American programmings you see on cable networks, or who are the true owners of those networks that do target African Americans, and how are those companies making money. Okay, that's what he's really talking about, and he's trying to bring some light to. Essentially, what he's saying is, I've got 7 networks, okay, and Comcast, you won't give me access, all right, to your subscribers, okay?
Well, they will. They will, and they have in the past to other people such as TV One and others.
Right.
But they did it based on you got to give me 40% equity.
Certainly.
in the whole
They've
deal.
done things
Or
like
you
that,
did, right?
or limit their market distribution
Absolutely.
on where their channels will be aired and things of that nature. And what Byron is saying is, look, that is what's unfair. Okay, the reasons that you've given me and my company as to why you won't include us, why you won't include us completely at the table, are just disingenuous, because you've got white networks that are not meeting that same standard that you are enforcing against me, that you have them on your network who are not as accomplished, who don't have the same viewership that I have, but yet and still you won't include me. Now, Byron, from his perspective, he says that's about race. You're not doing it because of race.
Right, and I mean, I think there was some comments made that they didn't want to create another Bob Johnson.
Well, let me contextualize what Robert has said and what you said into something that the community can understand.
You don't think you can understand?
Better about the litigation.
Well, yeah.
Because the politics and economics of media are an overlay to what's in litigation. The litigation has 3 phases. It's the pleading, it's the discovery, which is pre-trial, and then trial. We all want to get to trial. Okay, so when Robert is talking about these, what we call the weeds, what Byron wants to do is to get into discovery.
Well, he said, and he did say that. He said he wants to get to discovery. Because once he gets to discovery, he can open up and show and prove.
Well, here's the basic. How can I prove? And this is my greatest nightmare. How can I prove discrimination in my complaint? I don't know what I don't know, and the rules of discovery are there so that I can say, well, how many contracts do you have? What is this universe of contracts that are like mine? Who's getting the contracts? What's the competitive process? How much are people getting paid? What are the barriers here? And why does my company over here, which appears to be competitive by objective standards, not compete enough for you to treat me the same way?
Right.
Basically, little black boy goes to an ice cream store and he has to pay $1 for an ice cream cone, and a little white boy goes and he pays 50 cents.
Right.
That's 1981. Same contract, same terms, same treatment.
Exactly.
Well, given that, then where do you think this thing is going?
Well, this I think is a very tough call. And the reason being is because, the Supreme Court, a lot of people like to think of them as, being somehow super intelligent deities. They're not. They're just normal people just like you and I. And they bring their biases to the table just like you and I. And I look at this as I can foresee the majority of the court seeing this more not about race and more about commercial rights, all right, and seeing that this is more about Comcast or a business having its freedom and its right to contract with who they want to for whatever reasons that they choose to. And I believe that they would embrace the lower standard, excuse me, the higher standard, that this should be a but-for standard even at the pleading stage, okay? So that they can limit the number of occasions in which people who claim to be discriminated against will have access to the court.
That's not my read from the court, though.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, I listened to every breath that was taken. And bravo to Santamano. Well, I'm probably mispronouncing her name, and I shouldn't be.
Santamaya.
I said it right. Okay. Unbelievable. On top of it, Ginsburg was not there.
Right.
She's sick. So we got 4 people.
Well, we understand she's going to participate in
the vote. So, but Kagan said something yesterday that was interesting. And this is what she said. Why do we have to have motivating factor or but for the pleading? It's a pleading.
Right.
And all these judges, Roberts, all these judges said, it's a pleading. It's the pleading, and you can't prove your case in the pleading. And why should we be all over the place? And even said, what's the difference between but for and motivating factor at the pleading stage? So I am not so sure if the court limits their focus only to the pleading and what's pled, that motivating factor won't remain there, and that they won't deal with, and I hope they don't deal with, the concession on the but for standard of proof that was made by Byron's lawyers, which by any objective measure, if anything, is hurting black people. That concession, in my view, that concession, because I'm the next case and the next case and the next case and the next case, I can't intellectually or comprehend that. And I know what they say, but this litigation is from 1866. Right. So there prayerfully will be a 2150 and a 2250, and the laws on the books and how they're interpreted by the courts. We cannot give the people who are attacking our rights, whether it's voting rights or civil rights, an inch. Okay, so winning this could be a win, but if they change that but for to trial, you can go to trial and you win. If you don't get the evidence of discovery, right, and you go to but for, and you're telling a jury.
I don't think you even get past summary judgment.
You may not get past some, because they did that in employment discrimination when they started talking about the change, and with qualified immunity in the police litigation. So when you change these burdens of proof, and you see for us, and for Byron, the real test, if you had to get to trial, is the jury instruction. And what they're telling the jury, and that's where that language that we're talking about, but for a motivating factor. So if you agree that you can tell a jury that but for that higher standard, it has to be but for the race discrimination, so many cases are going to go out the window at summary judgment.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, summary judgment, and even if you get past summary judgment, I mean, it wouldn't be terribly difficult for a defendant to raise some other reason.
Yes.
Okay, they always can find some other reason to include with the racial. They can concede, well, race was part of
and
the
court
reason,
talked about that
but
yesterday.
not the whole reason.
So are you concerned about where we are right now, where things stand? Is there seems to be a level of concern that I hear?
Well, certainly I'm always concerned when you talk about a case that has the potential to close the courthouse doors. I mean, again, I think that the Constitution requires and dictates that people have the ability to petition the courts to address any harms that they might be suffering. And whenever you have laws or whenever you have rulings by courts that narrow and limit that, I think is a bad thing.
Well, what I've outside of the legal piece that I hear, I support Byron, right? He is now challenging the system. I mean, Michael Bloomberg sued Comcast for the exact same thing.
Why shouldn't you support him?
Right. Yeah. No, I'm not saying you don't. But I mean, I think what he's doing is just making aware, and he's talking about a number of different issues. Now, legally, there could be questions: should you do this? Should you go this way? Should you go that way? Right? We all agree fundamentally in the fairness and making sure that people aren't discriminated against. Right? But I think he's opening up a wider thought process, and he's challenging the status quo, and he is challenging those people of color that are standing in the way and participating in the status quo.
But I think there's a
And I
deeper
think
question.
That, to me, I think that alone is not what I've seen. In my over 40-something years, it doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. Yeah, he sued the NAACP, and then he sued the National Urban League. Yeah, I mean, he put Al Sharpton on lawsuit, but then he explained why he did it.
But Kwame, let's talk about the reality, though. If you want to be real about it.
Well, it's real talk.
Let's be real. Let's be real, because the reality is that the way that we process these economic questions is outdated. It's antiquated. When we're talking about 21st century and we're talking about the changing in the world, the global changes, the technological changes, what we're really talking about here is Byron Allen doing something that we respect. But the bigger picture is that the masses of black people have to somehow be involved, and we have to find a more collaborative, inclusive, cooperative way to empower black people. Byron can be another Bob Johnson, can be another Oprah. And what I'm saying is, if we're looking at traditional capitalism in a way that happens without looking at how we rethink capitalism to make it more cooperative, because it really will matter to a limited extent what happens with Byron. And I'm just saying Byron will win. He's winning now, and he will win.
Why do you say that would be a limiting factor? Because anytime
because of the way I view capitalism.
Yeah, but without the ability, first you have to have capital to even be in the game that he's in.
Precisely.
Right. Okay.
That's right.
Okay, so he has the capital to
He
be
does.
in the game.
Yes.
He has a resource.
Now we're saying he's trying to
He
break
does.
down a barrier of discrimination, just like someone who has the capital to participate in government contracts but are unallowed to based on their being
I agree with that.
So you agree with that. So and the area in which he's trying to break through is one of the toughest areas that people
that's
of
not-
color has.
That's not what you asked me
So
my
it's-
point, though. But if you ask me my point, you got to understand that that's all things that I agree with. I'm looking at a larger picture, Kwame. I'm looking at the next 25, 50 years. I'll be gone. And I'm looking at how we structure things and how we engage and what we invest in. Anti-discrimination is fundamental. Good luck for Byron. I took time out of it. I do 1981 cases. My case is in this jurisdiction. I have some of the leading 1981 cases.
Because you was there yesterday, right?
I was there, I have an appellate case in the circuit where we won in 1981 in a shipping case.
Yes.
And so I understand that. But what I'm saying to you, and now I'm closing the page on that for a moment and saying, as we talk about our economic conditions, we have to rethink how we think about economics. Because my brothers here, we're going to make it. But the masses of our people out there that are struggling, we're not bringing the answers through this litigation to the table for them in terms of their own empowerment. They may get more information, and that's important. That's damn important. Quality information and intelligence is everything. But we need to look at how the Byrons, the Bob Johnsons, and the richest people in our community find ways to structurally deal with new economic models that empower our community.
Yeah, but
that's a separate question from what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I'm just under the belief, and you probably are too, and you may be also, is that he or she that is controlling the narrative and can control the pie and can control the economics to pass down is very, very important.
Very important.
And this is, in my opinion, one step in a larger step that you laid out that's needed. He has 5 shows on TV, and they're all black judges giving, talking about black things. He's basically saying, then I start to create the shows that are relevant to our community. I start to have programming. I start to require and hire, more people that look like me.
But I'm saying to you,
we're saying the same.
I'm saying to you that's elementary because that's a given. I'm saying to you that when you look under the rock,
it might not be a given.
No. But I'm saying to you, when you look under the rock, that's under the rock, that's under the rock, that can happen, but that's not going to change the trajectory of black people for the next 25, 50 years. Because you'll have more. What I'm saying to you, we have to go further than that. And I'm saying to you, in terms of, and if we just look at that traditional analysis and say, okay, today is Byron, tomorrow it's Marvin Jones or
No, you know,
Lashida.
I think You're minimizing this.
I'm not minimizing
I
it
think
at
I
all.
agree with Kwame. I think you are.
minimizing
I think
this.
you are. I think it certainly. I think we all would
If I agree with you, how am I minimizing it?
Because you're trying to take. And I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Kwame.
Because what you're doing is, and I agree to your thought process. You and I, much love. I know your heart. I want what you want, right? But I think we have to take time to, and I'm not saying you're not. It's to stop, because you're saying it could be Byron Allen Day. It's been a lot of people, and a lot of people have not had the same thought process as Byron Allen right now. We have too many people of color that don't have the same mindset that he has, that are in better positions, that are doing nothing. And until we hold our own people accountable, then I
don't think you hear me. I don't think you hear me.
it is.
I'm saying to you, you're saying something. You're operating on a presumption, first of all. First of all, the presumption is that you have time. Okay, that you have time that you don't have. Okay, the house is on fire for black people. Number one, they don't have the time that they think. With technology, you can look at, all you have to do is turn the TV on and see what's happening right now. And so what I'm talking about is something a little different than that economic model. I'm talking about a value construct. I was in Israel for a meeting where I represented the African Hebrew Israelites. I walked by a school. It said pre-K, heritage and legacy, okay, pre-K academy.
Okay.
And all I'm saying to you is that until we get our values realigned to be a more competitive part of the world order and the world civilization, these Byron Allen things are going to take us but so far. And I support them 1,000%. I litigate them, I fight them, but it's not enough, because I can go to my grave putting water on a fire that won't go out until we change the way we think.
And I think we agree on that.
Well, I think we do agree on that, but I think I take Kwame's approach more so than yours, Donald, in that I think that it is bigger because of the nature of this litigation. We're talking about multimedia. We're talking about what we see and we consume almost on a daily basis in TV and the content of it. And for younger people, when they watch and they look and they see these images and whether
I agree with that.
they
All of
reinforce, but that's why I think it's larger than your typical discrimination type case scenario.
I agree with that.
Here's a special. So I don't want to devalue or minimize, as Kwame said.
But when Kwame says I'm
what we're
minimizing,
talking
that's what
about.
I disagree with, because I don't minimize it. I value it to its zenith. However, I contextualize it as well, because in the equation of transformation, that's an element of transformation. It is a central element, but still, I always look at ownership and structural ownership and how and what's owned. So I'm saying to you that I am not one to fathom that individual ownership is going to be the answer to our woes.
No.
And so I'm challenging us to come up with new models for ownership that's going to empower those people that you want to understand this process.
Oh, I definitely see that, Donald. But I see it more of it's not about the ownership. It's about impacting the decision makers like Comcast.
Why is it not about ownership, though?
Well, it's not just purely about the ownership. Certainly, that is part of it. All right. But what Alan is saying is it's not just about who owns it. It's about who controls the images that are being projected.
I agree with that.
Well, and he's also saying it's not about him. See, he says
Right.
it's not about me. It's about challenging the broader concept.
I agree with that.
And you agree with it. I think that, and I'm not saying that you disagree with what we're saying. I think that I know you and I know your broader context, right? And there's some people who will say what you just said, but they don't have the heart that you're talking about, right? They just want to get off of this issue, right? And so I needed to step in because everyone doesn't have that heart. Everyone doesn't have that vision. Everyone has that passion. Everyone has been in that fight and that struggle. What they want to do is get off of this issue and move on to something else.
But where they want to go?
And if somebody write them a check, they'll get off.
But where they want to go, though. My point to you is this. Listen, I am 60 plus, okay? And I look at the world from a totally different lens. And when I see the world, I'm looking at my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, and it's not about going someplace else so simply, because I see the real world when I have to go, what Byron saw when he went into court. I'm going into court every day, whether it's a police case, whether it's a discrimination case.
Right.
You've seen these cases, you know
On
these
the front
cases.
lines.
And I'm saying, oh my God, What am I leaving my children? What are we leaving our community? And I'm saying we got to do so much better structurally and strategically.
Okay.
And so what I would ask
Understood.
Byron in that particular situation, think about this, gentlemen. What we're really talking about. We got a case going to the Supreme Court, and we have a judge, a white male judge, who says to Byron's lawyer, hey, wait a minute, let me understand something. You sued Sharpton, Urban League, da. So we got some infighting going on here as well, right? I want you to understand something. Where what I'm saying here
But the infight, no, because the
but you didn't let me finish the thought.
Okay,
Just
but
in talking.
I
I want to
Okay.
go to because what I'm talking about, I'm talking about 21st century strategy, structural dynamics, and it may not be the Urban League, but there should be some community-based organizations that are thinking about self-sufficiency, self-determination, maximizing our consumer dollars, and Byron's moving in that direction. I just want to look at a larger piece and not an individual piece.
I can respect that, but this inner fighting
let's talk about that.
When we come back, we're going to talk about, we're going to start off, Robert, and we're going to talk about this inner fighting. We're going to talk about what it means. We're going to talk about why it's happened, and then what has happened because of it, because there have been some good things that have come out of this inner fighting. We'll be right back.
Hello, this is Jeff Murphy. I'm Jeff Murphy, co-owner of Murphy's Auto Body here in Southeast DC, Ward 8, Anacostia. Just wanted to let you know we're probably the only minority-owned business that's almost a 50,000 square foot body shop in Washington, D.C. We do auto body repair, collision. We deal with several major insurance companies, Geico, State Farm, Allstate, walk-in custom contracts with government, commercial, private, and we're here to service the community. We've been here over 20 years, and this is a great community. Anacostia, we love it, great people, great customers. Come by and see us. Murphy's Auto Body.
Well, you go. What my job is always, and you see it with Thurgood Marshall's the board. My job is I'm always throwing.
You're pushing the
I'm
envelope.
pushing the
You're pushing the
envelope
envelope.
because you
I'm normally the one pushing the envelope, so now I'm sitting there,
you know,
I'm like trying to like, but I'm trying
Easy,
to
come back.
I'm normally pushing. No. I could be out there with you, but my job here is to let someone else push the envelope.
Right.
But then I want to stay because I just believe I've seen how our folks operate and what Byron is trying to do in terms of controlling media and control. I mean, we celebrate Tyler Perry, but yet everyone's not on really, going all in for what he's able to control, and what he's able to do is greater than what the majority of these folks are even doing.
But you know, but I operate on that. But does that mean? But see, I think.
I don't mean it's operate by itself. Yeah, we need to
But
do
in the
more,
real
we gotta do
talk
all that.
context, though, sometimes people need to be out there, and even Byron in his hand needs to be smacked.
So now you want to smack his hand?
Oh, on that burden of proof issue.
See, you probably
on that burden of proof issue. I'm smacking his lawyer's hand
Hold on. Now that's a
because it's going to kill me.
And your whole
And when I go back to court next week, it's going to kill me. And I go back to court next year, it's going to kill me. And when I go back to court the year after that, it's going to kill me. Every other case that I have because of what his lawyer did.
Yeah, but what you have is a beef with how they have gone about strategy with the case.
But I told you I agree with everything he did.
Right?
Yes,
And
exactly.
you letting those emotions
Those
ride
my
in
emotions
to
are not
in.
anti-Byron.
See, I didn't say it was. I had never said that. But it is reflective in your overall tone.
No. You're missing the point, and I want to tell you that. You know, you're missing my point.
You're missing the point.
Let me tell you, you're missing the
Let
point. Let me tell you, you're missing the point. Because I'm telling black people that the way that we think is outdated.
And we
have to change the way we think.
But no,
Okay?
everyone. I agree. I'm the first person who think that we need to, like, some of us, I believe we got to shoot some of these people who are acting like they're
I'll
for
say
us.
something.
Whatever. I ain't gonna say shoot because I got my defense attorneys in here, so I don't say shoot and saying physical shoot. But I'm just saying that I believe that just because you black, you don't get a free ride.
That's right.
And because the free ride black people is what caused us to be in the situation and not think bigger, to not go outside the box. It's our own thought process through our own people that's caused this, right? I just truly believe that, and I believe that the next generation is going to push, my generation out of the way with those that are faking. They're going to get them. Like they're not going to be as kind and as sensitive as that you see now. It's going to be a whole different ball game.
They got to get there though.
But they're there mentally. I think. I just think they're just not in the. They just don't understand the position on how to start being as. They're gonna be vocal.
See, what I'm talking about is I'm talking about wealth. I'm talking about legal strategies to collaborate wealth and to increase wealth.
Well, if you talk about that, then you should be all aboard. You don't like the process and the strategy.
I like that.
But you can't. You got to be there.
I like that, but I'm saying it needs to be expanded, and there needs to be a way, because we don't have the time, and there's a lot of money to be had. But collaboration and cooperation and new ideas. I spoke at Wharton. I keynoted at Wharton and I said the same thing there. You young people, give me new ideas, because the traditional ideas benefit us when we emulate the dominant culture.
This is a new idea. The new idea as a black man is now.
That's not a new idea.
I mean, but it's
not a new idea. It's Bob Johnson in a different configuration.
No, it's not.
Sure it is.
No, I disagree with no.
Bob did this programming, then he went and they sold this program, and he got no cable, and he made his money.
No, that's not. No, it's not.
Why is it different?
Because you say, oh, it's just like Bob Johnson. No, Bob never had Marion. At least gave them a shot up to be able to. Then,
but it's still the same process.
No, it's not, because this man is coming from the outside saying, okay, I have this stuff, and y'all want me to pay fees, right? Because you pay fees to Comcast in order to get on their stuff. And Comcast is just saying, no, we don't even want your money. We're not even going to allow you to be a part of what we have here. That was a little bit different.
Bob got in because he had the politics.
I mean,
but I understand the difference.
I mean, so that's when you say, because we say Bob, then it already brings a negative thought process.
But
when you say Bob Johnson, to some it does. And
I don't understand. I don't understand your resistance to my thinking that it's not purely about Byron. I don't agree with just saying, well, because a black man gets a new car dealership, that's the answer. I just don't believe that.
See how you just minimized that?
No, I'm not minimizing it.
You did. You just took that.
No.
And you put that in some
No, you didn't understand. No, you missed the point. You missed the point.
Well, guess what? Everyone's going to miss the point.
Guess what? I believe that car dealership should be. See, I'm talking about. You're a capitalist, and I'm a cooperativist.
How do you know I'm a capitalist?
Because you're disagreeing with my cooperativism.
No, because what you said is you laid it out.
I think the dealership should be owned by the black community.
You said, I don't believe that, just because, a black man has a car dealership, that's the win. I mean, you just kind of took that
I'm talking about ownership, though. No, you're missing the point. Just because the
black man was an owner of a car.
Exactly.
And you just took that thing and you just put, what he's doing is way different than a black man owning a car dealership.
No, it's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. It's individual ownership. I'm looking at the economic ownership. I'm not looking at the product.
Do you think was it me?
Maybe
it's me. Maybe it's my generation. Is it my generation that didn't understand what he just said?
When Donald, when he said...
No, it's what he said. It's not what it sounds. He articulated it.
You're missing
every
the
word
issue.
very carefully.
You're missing the issue. It's about individualism and individual ownership. That's what the system does. We're emulating the dominant culture.
He's about a system.
Who owns his businesses?
The network itself is a system-wide system. It's like Comcast is a system. It's the same. How is it not the same thing as Comcast?
I tell you.
Who owns Comcast? We talking about
Comcast. I tell you what. You would want to know the answer to my question to really understand the legitimacy of your observations. Okay? So I can give you an example, right? A person can get up there and say, well, I'm doing this, but then somebody else could own what's happening. So I'll give you an example.
I agree.
The new black news station I've been watching.
All the Republicans. All the Republicans.
Precisely.
I mean, but hold up. I have not heard one paid.
It's not a negative. I'm just saying it's a question.
Because we have a bunch of paid. Because when you fight the giant, right? The giant gonna pay some people.
Of course.
We know that. Just look like you.
Yeah,
and they're gonna bring up all this stuff to tell you why the other person that look like you is bad and is faking the funk.
That's right. That's right.
I haven't heard any of that yet. I haven't heard any of that.
Well, I mean,
I haven't heard of that.
But wasn't that part of the whole internal fighting that was going on? I mean, Alan says, hey, look, this MOU was done at the behest of Comcast and some other of these giants to get somebody who looks like me to basically devalue what I was saying. To say, hey, look.
It was absolutely, but what we did not hear is Comcast and other these figureheads saying, hey man, this Byron Allen station, he doesn't own it. There's some other people really behind him, and
But I'm saying
I've heard that from the other networks.
But I'm just saying those are
But
the
you put that out
range.
there. But
I
you
put
put
it out there because I'm inquisitive, and so I want to know. But I'm also,
But you put it out there like it was, like it was a possibility.
No,
like it was like it was on
I
the
put it out
table.
there in terms of larger scrutiny from my socialistic, cooperativist viewpoints
Have you
about
seen any
ownership.
evidence? Have you seen any
No,
evidence
I
of
didn't
it?
make that accusation.
Have you seen any
No,
evidence
no.
of it?
As a matter of fact, it's not even a concern for me here. But then, so you shouldn't take it that way.
Then why are we talking about it in the
I
context
raised
of
it
Byron
because we
Allen?
weren't talking about it in the context of Byron.
We talking
I was
about it-
talking about in
we-
the context of models.
No, we
Okay,
no, we was
and
talking about
structural
these
legal
1,000 car
models.
dealers.
But I was talking about that because I'm talking about individual ownership is not my preference. I'm not interested.
But it's not ours either.
No, but I
And
don't
so
think
therefore, I need to know
It's
who
not ours either.
owns.
that's when it sounds like you're limiting it. When you make the comparison to individual car ownership, I would agree with you there. But if Byron is successful, I mean, this kicks open the door way more than just one individual now gets his 7 networks on
Because
Comcast.
of
It's
what
way more than
his
that.
services that he's providing. I
Not
understand-
just his services, but I think it also means that Comcast and the other cable giants will look at it and say, you know what, we've got to be more inclusive, because if not, we can go the same fate of Comcast.
Difference of the concept. I mean, what I see take place is that what Byron is doing, and if he is successful, then he creates an avenue because he has like-minded, like we're thinking about, to then move
That's
the
what I see.
discussion to create what you're trying to go. We have too many people.
I don't know that. I hope so.
Well, I mean,
I don't
That's
know
what I
that.
believe.
I've not seen any evidence of that. I've not seen any evidence
That's
of
what I
that.
believe.
Period.
That's what
I hope
believe.
so. And you haven't either. You can't show me a single writing that you have seen that he's
Yes,
written.
but you know what? I can
And
listen. But I can listen to what he's saying, where we need to go as a
Right.
community. But you were making a point, and we just wanted to get back to that.
Yeah, I think when we look at Byron's lawsuit and we try to put a value on it, say, how significant is this? How big is this? Is this really going to be impactful? The difficult thing is what we don't know. We don't know how many other Byron Allen similarly situated individuals are out there who own multimedia companies who've been trying to gain access to cable networks like Comcast and have been denied. Okay, Byron had the resources. All right, he had the ability to bring the lawsuit, to bring the challenge. If he is successful, we don't know if there are a dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen similarly situated individuals who will march right through that front door that he's now kicked open, and it could change the complete landscape of what we see every day on TV. We just don't know.
Let me say this, and I can guarantee you $1 to a penny. There are literally thousands of commercial businesses that are deprived of contractual opportunities,
Yeah.
but for their race. Proving it and getting out there is critical, and opening that door. So to the extent that Byron is challenging that and he's in the game, whether it's media, whatever have you, but I know from experience, whether it's in Georgia, Mississippi, DC, Philly, there are people out there right here who come into the door saying, hey, I'm competitive and I'm being deprived of this contract.
Well, it's
opportunity.
interesting because there are also, some would say, a lot of other people watching this and saying, if in fact, Comcast prevails, then they can continue or
No doubt.
increase
No doubt.
their discriminating practices towards people of color.
Yes.
Right? I mean, this is, or that they have the potential, and I think this is why the Department of Justice, as you mentioned, and others are getting involved in this case, because
Absolutely.
other people can come through. It's clear that I think that it was mentioned that Sean Combs, Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, whatever, it has Revolt, right? And
Right.
Revolt is not really getting paid its fair share.
That's right.
I mean, there are multiple channels of people that are in the business that are taking less but can't say anything.
You
And
can
the
look
reason
at
why
DC.
they can't say
Yeah,
anything
you're right.
is because they can't jeopardize their
right.
financial, their partners and everyone is not. I mean, I just think the Kathy Hughes situation alone is telling, right?
Right.
The fact that she went there and they basically
give
said
up
had to give
equity.
up 40% equity in order to
Gain access.
just to gain access.
That's right.
And then take on the debt,
To
right?
buy 'em
To
out.
buy them out. And then people criticize them, especially people of color was criticizing. They're saying, "Oh, they're running their company raggedy. They're not doing the right
Right.
thing. Why they're not spending the money wrong?"
Right.
No, they had to pay They had to pay a crap load of money to
Yeah.
buy back something that was theirs to
Kathy
begin
might
with,
have
just to
had,
get in the
Kathy
industry.
may have had a 1981 claim.
I don't know, but I'm just
she
she
may have.
may
Kathy,
have.
and Kathy is a champion in this industry.
She is.
But even
Brilliant
locally,
businesswoman. Yeah.
in our local community, in our CBE community here
That's
in
right.
DC, when people get into deals, it might be at the wharf or it might be uptown at the hospital, the military hospital there on Georgia
Right,
Avenue.
that's right.
Yeah,
Walter
Walter
Reed.
Walter
Walter
Reed,
Reed.
when people get into deals and how these deals are structured, I tell you, I have a lot of concern in how these businesses get in, the equal treatment, what the financial pulls and pushes are, and at a certain point, the destabilization of that equalization. So
That's
people
against
make
the law, though, but the destabilization of that is against the law.
it is against the law.
Right.
It's against the law, and it's potentially,
The dilution is very clear in the law.
but it's a racial overtone to that. So is it motivating factor
Oh, but for.
or but for?
And that goes back to your point.
Right.
I mean, he's always good, isn't he? He gets it back
He
to his
brings it
point.
right back
He always
around.
brings, it don't matter what it is. Like I say, the cat walked down the street yesterday, and he'll be like, "But for or the motivating factor." And I'm saying, but I will say this as we close. This is a serious case. A lot of people don't understand the case. A lot of people are saying a lot about the case, and they don't even understand the ramifications one way or another.
Right.
A lot of people are being paid to say whatever they're saying. But then there's also a lot of people that are just flat out scared. They want to say the right thing, but they can't.
You know what a beautiful thing is, though, man?
What's the beautiful thing?
And I say it 1,000 times a year. The law is the law.
The law is the law.
And we have to make the law work. Now, this law, let me tell you what's beautiful about this law. It embodies struggle and debate. The Congress, an all-white Congress, passed this law. But listen to what they said. All persons within the jurisdiction of the United States shall have the same right in every state and territory to make and enforce contracts. But this is the beauty of it. To give, listen, evidence and to the full and equal benefit of all laws and proceedings for the security of persons and properties as is enjoyed by white persons. They put it there. If a white person has the right and you're the same, then you have the right. This is a level of complexity that's overlaying it. What this case, and this is what why I think Byron's struggle is significant, and Comcast may have shot themselves in the foot. It's an ironic thing. I listened. I'm a streetologist. I'm sorry. I'm a lawyer from the hood, right? And I listened, man, and I said, yo, wait a minute. This is not sounding like what I expected it to sound like. And that's why Byron is probably saying, hey, So on this mixed motivating factor test at the pleading stage, I think that Byron will win. My only hope is that's where the court ends it.
And it doesn't
Yeah.
stretch it to the
Yeah.
To the but for on the rest
There
of
you
the
go.
If
case.
you learn something today, we
Yeah.
learn but
But
for. We understand the but for very, very well. As we close, where can folks find you? I mean, look, you Washingtonian magazines named you. Where can folks find you? Just let folks know where they can find you.
Well, folks can find us. We have two offices, one here in D.C. as well. Our home base office is in Alexandria. We deal in civil rights matters, criminal defense matters, employment matters. That's pretty much what we deal with.
And you'll see his stuff. You see it on the screen. You'll see it on the screen. All of his information. Of course, Donald Temple. Where can people find you? It's going to be on the screen, which I think is extremely important. The reason why, because people call us, people email me, people text me, and they're saying, "Hey, I got this, who can I talk to? I know sometimes I'll throw folks over to you. Folks will say, hey, I got in trouble. Who can I get to help defend me?
Yes.
I want people to know the faces, but the people that I talk to and respect. They already know Pitbull. I call Pitbull 1 over here because it's but 4.
There you go.
But I say that I'm here with 2 of the best lawyers right here in the DMV area. It's Always Real Talk. We'll be back next week. Have a good one.